Hi guys, I'm Sean. I'm the nutritionist here at MatchFit Conditioning. And being a nutritionist, being with someone that works in football, one of the first questions I'll get asked when I speak to a football player is, what should I be eating and drinking at half time? So I thought I'd do this quick video today, so by the time your next match comes around, you can be prepared and have those things ready at half time to consume, and you'll be all good to go for the second half. Now, I've broken it down into three categories. So first, you've got your carbohydrate intake. Second, you've got your hydration. Third, you've got potentially caffeine intake as well. So if we start with carbohydrate, we know that carbohydrate is the primary energy source that fuels high intensity activity. So when you're on the pitch, all your movements such as sprinting, changing direction, jumping in the air, this is going to be primarily fueled by carbohydrates, or at least your carbohydrate stores within your muscle tissue, which come under the term muscle glycogen. Now, if you have really good pre-match nutrition, you can maximize your carbohydrate stores or glycogen stores within your muscle tissue. However, we can only store a set amount. And this set amount, if we do things correctly in an ideal situation, is going to be able to fuel us for 90 minutes of high intensity exercise. So if you think of a football game, roughly 90 minutes, this is going to be able to last us for the entirety of a football match in an ideal situation. However, the problem is people have different variations in how many carbohydrates they can potentially store within their muscle tissue. And also, even if you can last the 90 minutes, you're still always going to potentially risk carbohydrates becoming depleted during the game. And so if we can try to avoid this, if we have an opportunity to, then we should be taking advantage of this. And that is why carbohydrates should be something that all football players want to include within their halftime nutrition routine. Now, how many carbohydrates do you need? Well, if you look at the sort of top elite teams, sort of Chelsea, Man United, they roughly will be consuming, each player will be consuming around about 40 to 60 grams of carbohydrates in that halftime break. And the sources of carbohydrates they'll be consuming will vary depending on the player's personal preference. Some people prefer to have a liquid-based carbohydrate form, some people prefer to eat solid foods. If we're talking about an ideal situation, some type of liquid or gel-based carbohydrate source is going to be ideal because it's obviously going to require very minimal digestion, and therefore it's going to be absorbed and utilized within muscle tissue far quicker. So sports drinks such as Lucasades are going to be great. Any type of isotonic energy gel is going to be great. But if you do want to consume solid foods, you can do so. I just recommend having foods that are low in fat and also low in fiber, as these are nutrients which slow digestion. So solid foods to look at are bananas or really any type of fruit, or you can have something simple like rice cakes as well, or there are some good energy bars out there. Now moving on to rehydration, this is again very important, but it's quite difficult to touch on in a single video because hydration needs will vary player to player depending on your individual sweating rates, and this can vary dramatically. So one person might not sweat at all, one person might sweat loads, so your need for rehydration at halftime is going to be very different. However, we do know that everyone should be taking advantage of that halftime break and rehydrating to some extent. Now, a general guide is having around 0.5 litres of fluid or 500 millilitres within the halftime break. Whether you need slightly less or slightly more is going to vary. However, that's a general guide to stick to the next time you step out onto the pitch. Now, to make sure we're actually retaining this water and it's not just being excreted straight away, we want to also be including some type of sodium within that fluid. Now, if you stick with sports drinks or good isotonic sports gels, you can get them which have electrolytes already included, and they're usually included in quite a good amount, so you won't need to worry about that too much. However, if you're just having plain water, you might want to add a pinch of salt or something along those lines to ensure you get that sodium requirement. And then last but not least, we have caffeine. And this one is actually optional. Some people don't tolerate caffeine too well, but most players do. And it does have a lot of psychological and physiological benefits, such as increasing your concentration and increasing your power output. Now, you can just take caffeine before you step out onto the pitch pre-game. 15 minutes before, you can take whatever caffeine supplement or tablet that you have. And based off how long caffeine stays in the system, it should be able to last you quite easily towards the end of the game for that whole 90-minute period. However, a lot of players do actually seem to get increased mental stimulation and better avoid fatigue from splitting their caffeine dose, so having half before the game and then actually half at half time as well. Now, the amount of caffeine that you need in total is going to vary quite dramatically depending on how well you tolerate caffeine. However, it's probably going to range between 100 to 300 milligrams in total. So if you're splitting up your caffeine intake into 2 dosages, you might be having 100 milligrams before the game and 100 milligrams at half time for a 200 milligram combined total for that entirety of the game. Whether you think this might benefit you, it's really just down to you going out and testing it for yourself and maybe testing different dosages, starting low and then working your way up as the weeks go by and seeing if it has any additional benefit. But it's definitely something to look into for your half-time nutrition. Now that's all that I have for today, guys. I'll post some links below for the Match Fit programs. There is some great information that we offer, some great training programs, nutrition programs and psychology programs. So if you're interested in any of those, follow the links below and I'll catch you guys next time.